Energy is currency. Don't spend it on people who aren't worth the investment. Stay cool, stay in control. The Art of Never Getting Angry or Bothered. Written and published by Listen Grow Sleep. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from and what time it is. Thanks for spending this hour with me. Now relax, listen, and grow. Chapter 1. The Illusion of External Control. Have you ever noticed how some people just glide through life like ducks on a pond? Meanwhile, others are flopping around like fish on land, absolutely losing it over the smallest thing, like a pen running out of ink. What's up with that? Is it magic? Sorcery? A secret society of chill people? Nope. It's something way simpler and way harder. They figured out a cheat code, a code that says, hey, your emotions are yours, so stop letting other people hold the joystick. Think about it. The last time someone ruined your day, what happened? A snarky comment? A bad driver? A coworker stealing your genius idea? Yeah, all those things suck, but... And here's the kicker. They didn't ruin your day, you did. Wait, hold up. Are you telling me that Karen at work, Mr. No-Turn Signal, and the universe conspired against me? No, I'm telling you that somewhere between thing that happened and you losing your cool, there was a tiny magical moment where you could have just not. That moment is the space between stimulus and response. Sounds fancy, right? But it's not. It's like a little pause button for your brain. Most people skip it. They go straight from, this is bad, to I'm mad, with 0 stops in between. But the real MVPs, the unbothered people, they live in that space. They've got a lawn chair, a smoothie, and some vibes there. So, next time someone cuts you off in traffic, instead of screaming, maybe just don't. Ask yourself, am I driving the car, or is my anger driving me? Next time Karen takes credit for your work, think, do I want to spend my day mad at Karen, or just let Karen be Karen? Because here's the deal. Emotions are like stray cats. You don't have to adopt every single one that shows up. The Stoics got this. Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Translation. Chill, dude. Imagine if nothing, not a rude text, not a long line, not even Karen, could break your peace. That's not a fantasy, it's a skill. And you can learn it. Like learning to juggle, except the things you're juggling are your emotions, and you don't drop them every 5 seconds. Step 1. Notice when you're handing over your peace. Karen doesn't deserve it. The bad driver doesn't deserve it. The pen that betrayed you doesn't deserve it. Take your peace back. Step 2. Live in the pause. Between what happens and how you react is your freedom. Hang out there, decorate it, make it cozy. Step 3. Master the art of unbotheredness. This is your Jedi training. Your peace is your lightsaber. Protect it. So, the next time chaos swirls around you and life feels like it's trying to knock you over, just remember, you're the one holding the joystick. Don't let Karen play your game. And now, go be unbothered. Chapter 2. The Myth of Expectations. Hey, guess what? You've been lied to. Since you were a kid, they told you, people should act a certain way. Be polite, be kind, be considerate, and you believed it. Of course you did. Why wouldn't you? But surprise, that belief is ruining your life. Think about it. How many times have you thought, I would never do that to someone else? Or, how could they forget my birthday? I always remember theirs. And then, bam, you're mad, you're hurt, and you're spiraling because someone broke a rule they didn't even know existed. Here's the thing. People don't act according to your rules. They act according to theirs. Their actions, they're not about you. They're about them. That guy who cut you off in traffic, he didn't consult your rule book of courtesy, your coworker who interrupted you mid-sentence. They weren't channeling your sense of respect, your friend who forgot your birthday. Yeah, they weren't following your I always remember yours playbook. They're just being them. And here's where it gets wild. Expecting people to act like you is what's causing all your problems. Carl Jung had this fancy word for it, projection. Basically, you take your expectations, throw them at other people, and when they don't stick, you feel betrayed. But wait, it gets better. While you're busy projecting your expectations, other people are projecting theirs right back at you. It's like an endless game of emotional dodgeball, and spoiler alert, you're losing. So, what do? Let it go. Yeah, like Elsa. Let go of the idea that people should act a certain way just because you would. This doesn't mean you're lowering your standards or saying, sure, walk all over me. Number. It means recognizing that your standards are yours, not universal law. Imagine walking through life expecting nothing. No birthday reminders, no thank yous, no, oh, I'd never do that to you vibes. Not because you're cynical, but because you get it. People are just being themselves, not who you want them to be. Suddenly, that rude stranger, not a big deal. The forgetful friend, whatever. The inconsiderate co-worker, LOL. Okay. And here's the twist. When you stop expecting people to follow your invisible rules, you take back the ultimate power, the power to choose how you react. Next time you feel that disappointment creeping in, try this. Pause, take a deep breath, and say to yourself, oh, they're just being them. Cool, I'm still me. Because at the end of the day, your peace is too expensive to give away for free. So, ditch the emotional rulebook, embrace the chaos, and reclaim your freedom. You've got this. Chapter 3. The surrender of being right. So, think back to the last argument you had. Remember how it started as a conversation but quickly turned into a verbal WWE match? And before you knew it, you were strategizing your next move while the other person was still talking, as if you were on some debate team championship. Yeah, we've all been there. But here's the million-dollar question. Would you rather be right or be at peace? Spoiler alert, trying to be right all the time, that's exhausting. It's like carrying around this giant boulder called I'm right, you're wrong. And honestly, for what? A little ego boost? A momentary mic drop? Meanwhile, your relationships are over here like, hey, can we maybe stop turning every disagreement into a courtroom drama? The truth is, this obsession with being right comes from fear. Fear that being wrong makes you look dumb, or less than, or unworthy. But what if, and stay with me here, being wrong sometimes is actually fine? Wild concept, right? Next time someone disagrees with you, try this radical move. Pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself, do I actually need to win this argument? Or am I just in it for the adrenaline rush of being right? Spoiler again, you don't need to win. Why? Because not every disagreement is a battle. Sometimes it's just two people having different opinions. And that's okay. In fact, letting go of the need to be right can transform an argument from a sparring match into something cooler, a real conversation. Imagine this. Instead of gearing up with your I'm right armor, you go in with curiosity instead. Like, oh, that's an interesting perspective. Tell me more. Suddenly, you're not fighting, you're exploring. Lao Tzu got it right ages ago. The wise man knows what he does not know. Translation, chill. You don't have to know everything or win every argument to be valuable. And honestly, winning an argument feels good for like 5 minutes. But letting go of that need, that feels good forever. Think about all the mental energy you burn trying to be right. The rehearsing comebacks in your head, the imaginary replays where you totally won, the tension that sticks with you hours after the fight. Now imagine redirecting that energy into just chilling out. When you let go of being right, you get something way better. Peace, freedom, conversations that don't feel like gladiator matches. So next time you're in the heat of a disagreement, stop and ask, is being right worth losing my peace? Because guess what? It's not, and it never will be. Choose understanding over proving. Choose connection over correction. Choose peace over pride. Because in the end, nobody's handing out trophies for most right person of the year, but they might stick around if you're the one who chooses peace. Chapter 4. The Shield of Self-Worth. So, picture this. You're having a great day. The sun is shining, birds are singing, and you're feeling unstoppable. Then someone strolls in and says, "That idea of yours." Nah? Boom. Suddenly, the sun feels a little dimmer, the birds stop singing, and you're spiraling, questioning everything from your intelligence to your entire existence. Why does one critical comment outweigh 100 compliments? Well, welcome to the human condition. See, we've been outsourcing our self-worth since day one, handing over the keys to our emotional mansion to whoever walks by. And honestly, most people don't even deserve to be in the driveway, let alone holding the keys. Think about it. Someone says, "Wow, you're amazing," and you feel like royalty. Someone else says, "Not so much," and suddenly you're doubting everything. Your confidence is doing a roller coaster, but guess what? You're the one letting them control the ride. But what if you didn't? What if your worth didn't fluctuate based on someone else's mood or opinion? What if it was steady, solid, completely yours? This isn't about turning into some ego-driven robot who never listens to feedback. It's about building a foundation so strong that external opinions can nudge you, but they can't shake you. Carl Jung had this fancy idea called individuation. Translation: stop letting the crowd decide who you are. Your value isn't a group project. Here's the truth bomb. Your worth is like gravity. It exists whether or not anyone acknowledges it. It's constant, unshaken by applause or criticism. But society's been whispering nonsense in your ear since kindergarten. Gold stars equals good job. Parents' approval equals you're worthy. Likes on Instagram equals you matter. And now, here you are, an adult, still waiting for some invisible scoreboard to light up and tell you you're doing okay. Let me save you the suspense. The scoreboard doesn't exist. The more you chase validation, the more people pick up on it. And instead of showering you with the approval you're craving, they either ignore it or, worse, use it to manipulate you. Marcus Aurelius nailed it centuries ago. We love ourselves more than anyone else, but we care more about their opinions than our own. What if you flipped that? What if you valued your own view of yourself more than anyone else's? Here's what that could look like. You pitch an idea at work and someone shoots it down with a snarky remark. The old you, spiraling. The new you, calm. You think, that says more about their bad day than my idea. I'll reassess later, but their opinion doesn't define me. See the shift? You're not ignoring criticism. You're just filtering it through your own judgment instead of swallowing it whole. This is what psychologists call an internal locus of evaluation. Fancy term, but it just means you're the boss of your self-worth. The Buddha said it best. Attachment leads to suffering. And when you're attached to others' opinions of you, the suffering is real. But detaching, that's freedom. It starts small. Notice how often you're chasing approval. Notice how much your mood shifts based on someone's reaction. Then ask yourself, why does this person's opinion matter so much? What would happen if I trusted my own assessment instead? And little by little, you'll notice a change. You'll stop trying to fit into everyone's expectations. You'll stop silencing your voice just to avoid criticism. And you'll start living life for you, not for an audience. And here's the kicker. When you stop seeking validation, you actually get more of it. Why? Because people are drawn to those who don't need their approval to feel whole. So, next time someone's words sting, pause, take a deep breath and remind yourself, my worth isn't up for debate. It's not theirs to decide. It's mine, and it's unshakable. In that moment, you cut the strings, you reclaim your emotional kingdom, and you take one step closer to true freedom. Chapter 5. The Fortress of Boundaries. Imagine your energy as a fortress, not a fortress of isolation, but one of intentional design. Within its walls, your resources are guarded and distributed wisely, ensuring that every ounce of your effort goes to what truly matters. This fortress doesn't exclude, it defines. It doesn't lock people out, it protects your emotional center. And like any stronghold, it requires boundaries, clear, deliberate, and unwavering. Without boundaries, life becomes a free-for-all. Every demand, every message, every ask becomes a draw on your finite energy. You become a reservoir with no dam, drained before you even realize what's happened. But boundaries change that. They are the framework that transforms chaos into clarity. Boundaries aren't walls, they're bridges. The first misconception to dismantle is that boundaries are selfish. They aren't walls built to keep people out. They're bridges that allow healthy connections while ensuring your well-being. Think of them as emotional guideposts. This is what I can give. This is what I cannot. This is where I end, and you begin. Boundaries let you engage with the world from a place of fullness rather than depletion. Why setting boundaries feels hard. Here's the catch. Boundaries aren't popular. Setting them means saying no when you've been conditioned to say yes. It means tolerating the discomfort of others' disappointment and resisting the pull to overextend yourself. From a young age, many of us are taught to value compliance over authenticity. Good kids share, good employees stay late, good friends answer the phone at 2 a.m. But this conditioning often confuses being good with being accessible. The truth? Your value isn't tied to your availability, the immune system of your emotional life. Just as your body's immune system protects you from harmful invaders, boundaries protect your emotional energy from being drained. Without them, resentment builds, exhaustion creeps in, and emotional volatility takes over. Here's how to identify where your boundaries might be weak. Do you feel drained after certain interactions? Do you say yes out of guilt or fear of conflict? Do you find yourself avoiding people who consistently cross your limits? These patterns reveal the areas where your energy is leaking and where boundaries need reinforcement. Building your fortress, a step-by-step guide. 1. Clarity is key. You can't set boundaries if you don't know what you value. Ask yourself, what truly matters to me? What do I need to feel balanced and whole? What am I no longer willing to tolerate? The answers will guide you in defining your limits. 2. Start small but firm. Boundaries aren't about grand declarations. They're built moment by moment. Instead of overloading your plate, say, I can't take on more right now. Instead of agreeing to plans out of obligation, say, I'll need to check my schedule first. These small shifts create big changes. 3. Communicate without apology. Setting a boundary doesn't require a long explanation. Keep it clear and concise. I won't be able to join this time. I need uninterrupted time to focus right now. Avoid over-apologizing or justifying your decision. Your limits are valid without explanation. 4. Brace for pushback. Not everyone will celebrate your boundaries, especially those who benefited from your lack of them. Stay grounded. Remember, their reaction is about their discomfort, not your worthiness. Practice phrases like, I understand this is frustrating for you, but this is what I need. I hear you, but I have to honor my limits. 5. Honor your own limits. Boundaries are only as strong as your commitment to them. If you repeatedly compromise, others will see your limits as negotiable. Stay firm, even when it's uncomfortable. The gift of boundaries. As you practice setting and maintaining boundaries, you'll notice profound changes. Your energy stabilizes. No longer scattered, it's directed toward what matters most. Your relationships improve. Those who respect your boundaries will strengthen their connection with you. Your peace deepens. You'll stop living in reaction mode and start responding from a place of balance. And perhaps most importantly, you'll rediscover yourself, your priorities, your values, your authentic voice. So ask yourself, where is my energy being drained? What limits can I set today to reclaim it? How can I build my fortress of boundaries, one choice at a time? The journey won't always be easy, but it will always be worth it. Because within your boundaries lies not just protection, but freedom. The freedom to live life on your own terms. Chapter 6. The Alchemy of Silence. You ever notice how loud everything is? Like, the world never shuts up. It's just noise, opinions, arguments, social media, news, family. Everyone wants something from you. Right now. But what if the most powerful thing you could do is nothing? You know, like just shut up. Not because you're scared or weak, but because silence is kind of the best superpower we forgot we had. Think about it. Someone says something rude to you. What's your first move? Defend yourself. Right. Your brain's like, they just insulted me. Better come up with something clever to shut them down. Your heart starts racing. You're about to drop the perfect burn. And then... wait. What if you just did nothing? Like zero reaction? Just let it hang there. Boom. Silence. That's the secret. Silence isn't weakness. It's like choosing your own reality instead of getting dragged into someone else's mess. Epictetus, some dude from way back in the day, was like, if someone talks trash about you, don't defend yourself. Just say, well, they don't know my other flaws, or they'd have mentioned those too. Classic. No fight needed. Just drop the mic and walk away. Here's the thing. When you respond, you give that negativity power. You take something tiny and make it bigger than it should be. Silence. Silence takes all the power back. It's like a force field around your peace. You don't have to fight every battle. You get to choose when to engage. Imagine you're in a meeting. Someone makes a dumb comment about your idea. The room goes silent. Everyone's waiting. Your move. You could jump in and defend yourself, right? Escalate things. Or you could just not. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means you're in control. You're saying, I don't need your validation. I choose how I respond. It's not easy though. Your brain's like, if I don't say something, I'm a pushover. But, nope. Silence is like self-mastery. Rumi said, silence is the language of God. Everything else is a poor translation. What does that even mean? It means silence is where the real answers live. It's where peace is. You don't need to talk to make things make sense. And it's not just other people. It's that voice in your head. You know, the one that makes everything seem worse than it is. You get cut off in traffic and your brain's like, that person's trying to ruin my day. But what if you just didn't believe that? What if you just watched the thought and said, okay, cool, not reacting to that? That's silence too. The space between the thing that happens and your reaction. You get to decide how to respond instead of being a puppet to your own mind. And guess what? Meditation helps with that. Just sitting there, watching your thoughts float by like clouds. You're not your thoughts, you're the guy who watches them. Mind-blowing, right? Thich Nhat Hanh says, mindfulness is just being there without getting caught up in it. That's silence. You don't let things mess with you. The Dalai Lama, he's all about it. Sometimes, silence is the best answer. No argument. Just chill. Here's a thought. How many times have you spoken in anger and then regretted it? Maybe you could have just taken a second, let the silence sit, and not made things worse. What if you started with silence? Not because you're scared of confrontation, but because you're choosing your response. Imagine feeling the peace that comes with saying, I'm not controlled by your words. It starts with awareness. You feel the urge to snap back and you're like, hold up, I don't need to do this. Then comes the pause. At that moment of, okay, let me think about it. And inside that pause, you can ask yourself, is this worth it? Does this situation need me to react, or can I just let it go? Over time, you'll notice less drama, fewer arguments, more peace. You speak less, but when you do, people listen more. And when they try to mess with your vibe, it doesn't work. Your silence defends you. So, what would happen if you gave silence a shot? What if you didn't engage every time someone tries to get under your skin? What if you took a second, let the noise die down, and just chose peace instead? That's the power of silence. It's not about shutting down. It's about choosing when to speak and when to let the world keep talking while you just keep being you. Try it. Chapter 7. The Alchemy of Gratitude. Imagine you're having one of those days, the kind where everything seems determined to test your patience. Your alarm fails to go off, making you late. Traffic is unbearable. Your colleague takes credit for your work. Your plans fall apart. By midday, anger and frustration have become your constant companions, colouring everything in shades of irritation. Now imagine, in the midst of this cascade of annoyances, that you pause and deliberately shift your focus to something entirely different. What's going right? The coffee that warmed your hands this morning, the stranger who let you merge in traffic, the project you completed successfully, the message from a friend that made you smile. This simple shift, from focusing on what's wrong to acknowledging what's right, is the alchemy of gratitude. It's the remarkable ability to transform anger into peace, frustration into acceptance, reactivity into calm. Here's a profound truth that most people never fully grasp. You cannot feel grateful and angry simultaneously. These emotional states cannot coexist in the same moment of consciousness. When you genuinely cultivate gratitude, you create a neurological environment where anger simply cannot take root. This isn't spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. It's not about denying legitimate grievances or pretending that difficulties don't exist. It's about recognizing that your focus determines your experience, and that even in the most challenging circumstances, there remains something for which you can be thankful. The ancient Stoics practiced this discipline rigorously. Epictetus advised his students to focus not on what they lacked, but on what they had, noting that he is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. This wisdom recognizes that our perception shapes our reality more powerfully than external circumstances. Consider this. Two people can experience identical challenging situations, yet have completely different emotional responses. One becomes consumed by anger and resentment, while the other maintains perspective and peace. The difference isn't in what happens to them, but in how they frame what happens, whether they focus on what's been taken or what remains. Gratitude is this reframing in action. It's the deliberate choice to shift your attention from what's lacking to what's present, from what's wrong to what's right, from what's lost to what's still available. This practice becomes particularly powerful when you're on the verge of anger. In that critical moment when you feel the familiar heat rising, the tightening in your chest, the narrowing of your focus, that's precisely when gratitude can work its transformative magic. Imagine you're stuck in standstill traffic when you're already running late for an important meeting. Your instinct might be to grip the steering wheel tighter, curse under your breath, perhaps even honk your horn in futile protest. But what if, instead, you took a deep breath and deliberately sought something to appreciate? Perhaps the extra time to listen to your favorite podcast, the warmth of the sun through the window, the fact that you have a car that functions reliably, the meeting you're heading to, which represents opportunity. This shift doesn't change the external reality, the traffic remains, but it completely transforms your internal experience. The anger that was building dissipates, replaced by a sense of perspective and even peace. The Roman philosopher Cicero declared that gratitude is not only the greatest of virtues, but the parent of all others. This insight recognizes that gratitude isn't merely a pleasant emotional state. It's the foundation from which other virtues grow. When you're grateful, you become more generous, more patient, more forgiving, more resilient. But like any transformative practice, gratitude requires cultivation. It rarely arises spontaneously, especially in challenging circumstances. It must be deliberately developed, consistently practiced, intentionally chosen. Here's how to begin. Start each day by identifying 3 specific things for which you're grateful. Not vague generalities like my family or my health, but precise moments or details. The way your child laughed at breakfast, the feeling of warm water in your shower, the taste of your morning coffee, the colleague who complimented your work yesterday. This specificity matters because it trains your mind to notice the particular rather than the general, the present moment rather than abstract concepts. It anchors gratitude in your lived experience rather than in intellectual acknowledgement. Then, throughout the day, especially when you feel anger or frustration arising, pause and ask yourself, what can I appreciate in this moment? What's going right that I'm overlooking? What do I still have that I'm taking for granted? This practice becomes particularly powerful when applied to the very situations or people that trigger your anger. The driver who cut you off, perhaps they're rushing to an emergency you know nothing about. The colleague who criticized your work, perhaps they've shown you a blind spot that will ultimately improve your performance. The plans that fell apart, perhaps they've created space for something better to emerge. This doesn't mean manufacturing false positives or denying legitimate problems. It means expanding your perspective to include what's working alongside what isn't, what's present alongside what's missing, what's right alongside what's wrong. The Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh captures this wisdom beautifully. When we recognize the virtues, the talent, the beauty of Mother Earth, something is born in us, some kind of connection. Love is born. This connection to the present moment, to the world around you, to others, to yourself, is what gratitude cultivates. And in that connection, anger simply cannot survive. Consider how often your anger stems from focusing exclusively on what's lacking, what's wrong, what should be different. The colleague who didn't acknowledge your contribution, the partner who forgot an important date, the stranger who was rude, the opportunity that didn't materialize. Now imagine shifting your focus in each of these situations, not denying the disappointment or frustration, but expanding your awareness to include what's still good, what's still working, what's still available to appreciate. This shift doesn't happen automatically. It requires intention, attention, and practice. It demands that you override your brain's negativity bias, its natural tendency to focus on threats and problems rather than opportunities and blessings. But with consistent practice, gratitude becomes more than a momentary intervention. It becomes a way of seeing, a lens through which you experience your life. You begin to notice beauty where you once saw only problems, abundance where you once saw only lack, opportunity where you once saw only obstacles. And as this perspective takes root, something remarkable happens. The threshold for what triggers your anger rises dramatically. The small annoyances that once ruined your day now barely register. The provocations that once sent you into a spiral of reactivity now bounce off the shield of your gratitude practice. You become less reactive, not because you're suppressing your emotions, but because you're experiencing your reality differently. You're no longer at the mercy of every frustration, every disappointment, every inconvenience, because your focus has expanded to include the larger context of what's still good, still beautiful, still worthy of appreciation. The next time you feel anger rising, try this simple practice. Pause, take a deep breath, and identify 3 specific things you can appreciate in that moment. They don't have to be related to the situation triggering your anger. In fact, it's often more effective if they're not. Just shift your focus deliberately to what's worthy of gratitude. Notice what happens to the anger. Notice how it begins to dissolve, how it loses its grip on your consciousness, how it gives way to a broader perspective that can hold both the challenge and the blessing, both the difficulty and the opportunity. This is the alchemy of gratitude, the transformation of lead into gold, of anger into peace, of reactivity into response. It's available to you in every moment, requiring only your willingness to shift your focus from what's wrong to what's right, from what's missing to what remains. So I ask you, what might change in your life if you approached each day, each interaction, each challenge with a deliberate focus on what you can appreciate? How might your relationships transform if gratitude became your first response rather than reactivity? What freedom might you discover if you no longer allowed circumstances to dictate your emotional state? The practice of gratitude offers a path to this freedom, not by changing what happens to you, but by transforming how you experience what happens. And in that transformation lies the key to remaining unbothered, unshaken, and at peace, regardless of what life brings your way. Chapter 8. the mirror of criticism. Think about the last time someone criticized you. Perhaps it was a comment about your work, a judgment about your choices, or an observation about your behavior. Remember how it felt, the immediate tightening in your chest, the defensive thoughts that rushed in, the impulse to justify, explain, or counterattack. This reaction is so universal, so automatic, that we rarely question it. We assume criticism naturally produces pain, defensiveness, and often anger. But what if this reaction isn't inevitable? What if criticism could be received not as an attack to defend against, but as information to consider? Not as a judgment of your worth, but as a perspective that might contain value? This transformation, from seeing criticism as a weapon to viewing it as a mirror, is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in your journey toward emotional mastery. Consider this. When someone offers criticism, they're providing you with data about how your words or actions are perceived, data about the impact you're having, data about blind spots you might not be able to see on your own. This data, regardless of how it's delivered, can be invaluable if you're willing to examine it objectively. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus understood this when he advised, "If you are told that such an one speaks ill of you, make no defense against what was said, but answer, he surely knew not my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these only." This response reflects not defensiveness, but a profound humility, a recognition that criticism, even when inaccurate or unkindly delivered, might contain a kernel of truth worth examining. But this perspective runs counter to our instincts. We're wired to protect our self-image, to defend our actions, to preserve our sense of being right and good. Criticism threatens this self-concept, triggering what neuroscientists call a threat response. The same physiological reaction activated when we face physical danger. This is why criticism so often leads to anger. When we feel attacked, even verbally or psychologically, our body prepares for battle. Our heart rate increases, our muscles tense, our thinking narrows to focus on the threat. We become defensive, argumentative, sometimes even aggressive in return. But what if you could interrupt this automatic sequence? What if, instead of reacting to criticism as a threat, you could receive it as information, potentially valuable information about how you're perceived, about the impact of your actions, about aspects of yourself you might not fully see? This shift begins with a fundamental recognition. Criticism is never really about you. It's about the other person's perception, which is shaped by their experiences, values, expectations, and current emotional state. Even when criticism contains objective truth, the fact that the person is delivering it and how they're delivering it reveals more about them than about you. Understanding this creates immediate distance between you and the criticism. It allows you to consider the feedback without feeling that your entire self-worth is under attack. You can ask, what might be true about this perspective? What can I learn here? Without feeling that you must defend your very existence. Imagine a colleague criticizes your presentation, saying it lacked clarity and organization. Your instinct might be to defend your work, to explain why they're wrong, perhaps even to counter-criticize their understanding or attention. But what if instead you paused and thought, there might be something valuable here. Perhaps parts of my presentation weren't as clear as I thought. Maybe there's an opportunity to improve. This response doesn't mean accepting all criticism as valid. It means being willing to examine it objectively, to extract what's useful while discarding what isn't. It means developing what psychologists call a growth mindset, seeing challenges, including criticism, as opportunities for learning rather than as judgments of your fixed abilities or worth. The ancient philosopher Aristotle noted that criticism is something we can avoid easily by saying nothing, doing nothing, and being nothing. The only way to avoid all criticism is to never take risks, never express yourself, never attempt anything meaningful. But a life lived in fear of criticism is a life half-lived. Instead of avoiding criticism, the path to emotional mastery involves transforming your relationship with it, seeing it not as something to fear or fight against, but as a potential source of growth and self-awareness. This doesn't mean all criticism is created equal. Some criticism is delivered with genuine care and a desire to help. Other criticism stems from jealousy, projection, or a need to control. Some criticism contains valuable truth. Other criticism says more about the critic than about you. Developing discernment about criticism is essential. Ask yourself, does this person have my best interests at heart? Do they have relevant expertise or perspective? Is their criticism specific and actionable, or vague and personal? Does it focus on behavior that can be changed, or on intrinsic qualities that cannot? These questions help you filter criticism, separating what's potentially valuable from what's simply projective or manipulative. They allow you to receive feedback selectively, taking in what serves your growth while letting go of what doesn't. But even when criticism is unfair, unkind, or inaccurate, meeting it with anger rarely serves you. Defensive reactions tend to escalate conflict, damage relationships, and close off opportunities for genuine communication. They also keep you stuck in a reactive mode, where your emotions are controlled by others' words rather than by your own choices. A more powerful approach is to meet all criticism, whether fair or unfair, kindly or unkindly delivered, with curiosity rather than defensiveness. This doesn't mean you accept abuse or tolerate disrespect. It means you choose not to let others' words trigger automatic anger or defensive reactions. When you receive criticism, try this practice. Take a deep breath. Create space between the stimulus, their words, and your response. Then ask yourself, what if there's something here I can learn from? What if, even if this is 90% wrong, there's 10% that might help me grow? This approach transforms criticism from a threat into an opportunity. It allows you to maintain your emotional equilibrium while still remaining open to feedback that might benefit you. It puts you in control of how you receive and process others' perspectives, rather than being at the mercy of their delivery or intent. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron offers this wisdom. If someone comes along and shoots an arrow into your heart, it's fruitless to stand there and yell at the person. It would be much better to turn your attention to the fact that there's an arrow in your heart. This metaphor captures the essence of transforming your relationship with criticism, focusing not on defending against the source, but on what you can learn from the experience. As you practice this approach, something remarkable begins to happen. Criticism loses its power to disturb your peace. When you no longer perceive feedback as an attack on your worth, when you can receive it with curiosity rather than defensiveness, you free yourself from one of the most common triggers of anger and reactivity. You also open yourself to growth in ways that defensiveness prevents. Every perspective, even those delivered critically, offers a window into how others experience you and your actions. This information, when received openly, can help you refine your communication, adjust your behavior, and develop greater self-awareness. This doesn't mean you become a passive recipient of all criticism, never defending your boundaries or clarifying misunderstandings. It means you respond from choice rather than reaction, from curiosity rather than defensiveness, from a desire to understand rather than a need to be right. When criticism comes your way, you might say, "That's an interesting perspective. Can you tell me more about what you observed?" Or, "I appreciate you sharing that. Let me think about it." Or simply, "Thank you for the feedback." These responses acknowledge the other person's perspective without either accepting it as truth or rejecting it as attack. Over time, as you practice receiving criticisms with curiosity rather than defensiveness, you'll notice a profound shift in your relationships. People become more willing to share honest feedback when they don't fear your reaction. Conversations become more authentic and productive. Conflicts de-escalate more quickly. And perhaps most importantly, you discover a new kind of freedom. The freedom to learn and grow without being constrained by fear of judgment or criticism. You become more willing to take risks, to express yourself authentically, to attempt things at which you might fail, because criticism no longer threatens your sense of worth or triggers unmanageable emotions. So I ask you, how might your life change if you could receive all feedback, all criticism, all challenging perspectives with curiosity rather than defensiveness? What might you learn if you approached criticism as a mirror, reflecting information that might help you grow, rather than as a weapon to defend against? What freedom might you discover if others' words lost their power to disturb your peace? The next time someone offers criticism, try viewing it as a mirror rather than an attack. Look for what you might learn, what might be reflected back to you that you couldn't see on your own. Approach it with curiosity rather than defensiveness, with a desire to understand rather than a need to be right. In that shift, you'll discover one of the most powerful tools for emotional mastery, the ability to transform what once triggered anger into an opportunity for growth, self-awareness, and deeper connection. Chapter 9. The Art of Letting Go. Imagine holding a hot coal in your hand. You're gripping it tightly, determined to throw it at someone who has hurt you. But as you wait for the right moment, searching for your target, the coal continues to burn your own flesh. Who suffers more in this scenario, the person you intend to hurt, or you holding onto the burning coal? This metaphor, attributed to Buddha, perfectly captures the nature of resentment, grudges, and unresolved anger. When you hold on to these emotions, determined to make someone pay for their transgressions, you become the primary victim of your own vengeance. The person who wronged you may continue their life unaffected, while you remain trapped in a prison of your own making, your peace consumed by the fire of unresolved anger. The art of letting go is perhaps the most challenging and liberating practice in emotional mastery. It's not about forgetting what happened, or pretending you weren't hurt. It's not about excusing inexcusable behavior or denying legitimate grievances. It's about freeing yourself from the emotional bondage that comes from clinging to pain, resentment, and the desire for retribution. Consider how much of your emotional suffering comes from holding on to things you cannot change. Past hurts, disappointments, betrayals, losses. Each time you replay these events in your mind, each time you re-engage with the anger or pain they caused, you're choosing to suffer again in the present moment. You're allowing the past to colonize your present, to determine your emotional state long after the actual event has ended. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus understood this when he advised, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. This wisdom recognizes a fundamental truth. You cannot control what has already occurred, but you can control how you relate to it now. You can choose whether to keep reliving the pain or to release it and move forward. But letting go isn't easy. Our minds are wired to hold on to negative experiences more strongly than positive ones. A phenomenon psychologists call the negativity bias. This evolutionary adaptation helped our ancestors survive by ensuring they remembered and avoided dangers. But in modern life, this same mechanism often keeps us trapped in cycles of rumination, resentment, and reactivity long after the actual threat has passed. Letting go also challenges our sense of justice. When someone has wronged us, we feel they should pay a price, that there should be some consequence for their actions. Holding on to anger can feel like ensuring they don't. Get away with it, even if they remain completely unaware of our continued resentment. But here's the paradox. Holding on to anger and resentment rarely affects the person who hurt you. It doesn't teach them a lesson or ensure justice. It simply keeps you bound to the pain, preventing your own healing and growth. The practice of letting go begins with a radical acceptance of what is and what has been. It means acknowledging that the past cannot be changed, that wishing things had been different doesn't make them so, that continuing to fight against reality only prolongs your suffering. This doesn't mean you approve of what happened or that you wouldn't have preferred a different outcome. It simply means you stop arguing with reality. You stop insisting that the past should have been different, and you start dealing with what actually is. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron captures this beautifully. You are the sky. Everything else, it's just the weather. This metaphor reminds us that while painful emotions, like storm clouds, may pass through our awareness, they don't define us. We can observe them, experience them, and let them pass without becoming identified with them. Letting go happens in layers. It's rarely a one-time decision, but rather a practice of repeatedly releasing your grip whenever you notice you've tightened it again. You might decide to forgive someone, to release the resentment, only to find it resurfaces days or weeks later. This doesn't mean you've failed, it means you're human, and the practice continues. Consider a concrete example. Perhaps a close friend betrayed your trust, sharing something personal you had told them in confidence. The initial hurt was intense, but months have passed, and you still feel the sting of anger whenever you think about it. You've replayed the incident countless times in your mind, imagining what you should have said, fantasizing about confrontations or revenge, feeling the hurt and anger as freshly as when it first occurred. Letting go in this situation doesn't mean pretending the betrayal didn't hurt or that trust wasn't broken. It means choosing to stop feeding the resentment with your continued attention and emotional energy. It means recognizing that your anger, justified as it may be, is now causing you more suffering than the original betrayal. The practice might look like this. When you notice thoughts about the betrayal arising, you acknowledge them without judgment. I'm thinking about what happened with Alex again. Then, instead of following the familiar path of rumination and resentment, you consciously choose a different response. I'm choosing to release this now. Holding on to this anger isn't serving me. You might then deliberately shift your focus to something present and positive. The warmth of the sun on your skin, the taste of your coffee, the sound of birds outside your window. This isn't about suppressing the feelings, but about choosing where to direct your attention. Over time, with consistent practice, the grip of resentment begins to loosen. The thoughts about the betrayal may still arise, but they carry less emotional charge. You can acknowledge what happened without being pulled into the vortex of anger and hurt. You can remember without reliving. This practice extends beyond interpersonal hurts to all forms of attachment that cause suffering. Attachment to how things should be, to outcomes you can't control, to expectations that reality hasn't met. In each case, the path to peace lies not in changing what is, but in changing your relationship to it. The Taoist concept of wu wei, often translated as non-doing or effortless action, captures this beautifully. It's not about passivity, but about aligning with the natural flow of life rather than constantly struggling against it. When you stop resisting what has already occurred, when you release your grip on how things should have been, you free up enormous energy that can be directed toward creating what's possible now. Letting go also involves releasing the need for closure or resolution on your terms. Sometimes the apology never comes. Sometimes the explanation you seek remains elusive. Sometimes justice, as you envision it, never manifests. Waiting for these external conditions before you'll release your anger keeps you bound to circumstances beyond your control. True freedom comes from recognizing that your peace doesn't depend on others' actions or acknowledgements. You can release resentment whether or not the other person apologizes. You can move forward whether or not they recognize the impact of their actions. You can heal whether or not they change. This isn't about letting people off the hook or enabling harmful behavior. You can set clear boundaries, seek appropriate justice through proper channels, and choose not to maintain relationships with those who consistently harm you. But you can do all this without carrying the burning coal of resentment, without allowing past hurts to determine your present emotional state. The practice of letting go becomes particularly powerful when applied to anger toward yourself. The self-criticism, regret and shame that often prove even more persistent than anger toward others. Many of us carry the weight of past mistakes, missed opportunities, or perceived failures long after they've occurred, punishing ourselves repeatedly for what cannot be changed. The same principles apply here. Acknowledge what happened without judgment. Recognize that continuing to berate yourself doesn't serve your growth or healing, and consciously choose to release the grip of self-recrimination. This doesn't mean avoiding responsibility for your actions, but it does mean extending to yourself the same compassion and forgiveness you would offer to someone you love. As you practice letting go of resentments toward others, of anger toward yourself, of attachment to how things should be, you'll discover a profound lightness of being. The energy that was once consumed by maintaining grudges and reliving past hurts becomes available for creating, connecting, and fully experiencing the present moment. You'll find yourself less reactive, less easily triggered by current events that resemble past hurts. You'll develop greater resilience in the face of disappointment and setback. You'll experience more genuine connection with others, unburdened by the walls that resentment builds. And perhaps most importantly, you'll discover that true power lies not in holding on, but in letting go. Not in controlling what cannot be controlled, but in choosing your response to what is. You'll experience the freedom that comes from recognizing that while you cannot change the past, you can always change your relationship to it. So I ask you, what are you still holding on to that's burning you? What resentments, grudges, or attachments are consuming your peace? What might become possible in your life if you released your grip on these burning coals? The practice of letting go isn't a one-time event, but a continuous choice. A moment-by-moment decision to release what no longer serves you. It's the recognition that your peace is too precious to sacrifice on the altar of past hurts or unmet expectations. The next time you notice yourself gripping tightly to anger or resentment, pause and ask yourself, is holding on to this serving my well-being? Is it bringing me peace or pain? Am I willing to release it now? In that moment of conscious choice, in that willingness to open your hand and let the burning coal fall away, you'll discover one of the most profound secrets of emotional mastery, that freedom comes not from controlling what happens to you, but from choosing what you hold on to and what you release. Chapter 10. The Integration of Emotional Mastery. We've journeyed through 9 profound practices that transform your relationship with anger and reactivity. Each one offers a powerful tool for emotional mastery, a way to remain unbothered in a world that constantly tests your equanimity. But the true art of never getting angry isn't about applying these practices in isolation. It's about integrating them into a cohesive way of being, a moment-by-moment consciousness that fundamentally changes how you move through the world. Imagine a master musician who has spent years practicing scales, studying theory, perfecting technique. When they finally perform, they're not consciously thinking about each individual element. They've integrated these components so deeply that they flow together in a seamless expression. Their fingers know where to go. Their breath supports each phrase. Their body responds to the music without conscious direction. Emotional mastery works the same way. In the beginning, you'll need to deliberately practice each element, pausing before reacting, questioning your expectations, letting go of the need to be right, detaching from others' opinions, setting boundaries, embracing silence, cultivating gratitude, reframing criticism, releasing resentment. But with consistent practice, these separate techniques begin to merge into a unified consciousness, a new way of being in relationship with yourself and the world. This integration doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds gradually, often imperceptibly, like water slowly reshaping stone. You might notice it first in small moments. A provocation that once would have triggered immediate anger now barely registers. A criticism that would have haunted you for days now passes through your awareness without leaving a mark. A disappointment that would have consumed you with resentment now becomes simply an experience to learn from and release. As this integration deepens, you'll find yourself responding to life's challenges with an almost effortless grace. Not because you're suppressing your emotions or pretending not to care, but because you've developed a fundamentally different relationship with your experience. One characterized by spaciousness, perspective, and choice rather than reactivity, contraction, and automatic patterns. The ancient Taoist concept of Wu Wei, often translated as non-doing or effortless action, captures this state beautifully. It's not about passivity or inaction, but about aligning so completely with the natural flow of life that your responses arise spontaneously from your deepest wisdom, rather than from conditioned patterns or ego-driven reactions. Consider how a master martial artist responds to an attack. They don't need to think about what to do. They don't freeze in fear or lash out in anger. Their body knows how to move, how to redirect energy, how to maintain balance while everything around them is in chaos. This isn't magic or mystical power. It's the result of thousands of hours of practice, of movements repeated until they become second nature, of principles embodied so deeply that they manifest without conscious effort. Your journey toward emotional mastery follows the same path. Each time you pause before reacting, you're strengthening neural pathways that support conscious choice over automatic reaction. Each time you question your expectations, you're loosening the grip of conditioned patterns that lead to disappointment and anger. Each time you practice any of these principles, you're rewiring your brain, reshaping your consciousness, evolving your relationship with your own experience. But integration requires more than just practice. It requires reflection, the willingness to examine your experiences, to learn from both your successes and your failures, to continuously refine your understanding and application of these principles. After a challenging interaction, take time to reflect. Which principles did I remember to apply? Where did I get caught in old patterns? What might I do differently next time? This reflection isn't about self-criticism or judgment. It's about conscious evolution, about using every experience as an opportunity to deepen your mastery. Integration also requires patience and self-compassion. You will have moments of profound presence and equanimity. You will also have moments where you completely forget everything you've learned and react from old patterns of anger and defensiveness. This is not failure, it's part of the process. The path isn't linear. It spirals, sometimes bringing you back to familiar challenges so you can approach them with new awareness. When you find yourself caught in reactivity, don't add a layer of self-judgment to the experience. Simply notice what happened, learn what you can, and recommit to your practice. Each moment offers a fresh opportunity to choose differently, to embody these principles more fully, to move one step closer to the integrated mastery you're cultivating. As these practices become more integrated, you'll notice profound shifts in every area of your life. Your relationships deepen because you're no longer bringing reactivity, defensiveness, or unexamined expectations into your interactions. Your work improves because you can receive feedback without defensiveness and navigate challenges without being derailed by emotional reactions. Your health benefits because you're no longer subjecting your body to the physiological stress of chronic anger and resentment. But perhaps the most significant transformation occurs in your relationship with yourself. You develop a profound inner peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. You discover a freedom that comes from knowing you're no longer at the mercy of your conditioned reactions. You experience a deep self-trust born from consistently choosing conscious response over automatic reaction. This doesn't mean you'll never feel anger again. Anger itself isn't the problem. It's a natural human emotion that sometimes provides important information about boundaries that need to be set or values that have been violated. The mastery lies not in never experiencing anger, but in how you relate to it when it arises. Whether it controls you or you remain sovereign over it. Whether it consumes your consciousness or you can hold it within a larger awareness. Whether it dictates your actions or you can respond from your deepest wisdom, even while feeling it. True emotional mastery isn't about reaching some perfect state where you're immune to all human feelings. It's about developing such a spacious relationship with your emotions that they no longer control you. You can feel anger without becoming angry. You can experience hurt without seeking revenge. You can face disappointment without falling into despair. You can encounter criticism without spiraling into self-doubt. This spaciousness, this ability to experience the full range of human emotions without being controlled by them, is the essence of what we've been cultivating throughout this journey. It's the foundation of a life where you're no longer bothered by circumstances beyond your control, where your peace is no longer at the mercy of others' actions or words, where your well-being arises from within rather than depending on external conditions. As you continue to integrate these practices, you'll find yourself moving through the world with a remarkable combination of strength and softness. You'll be strong in your boundaries, clear in your values, firm in your self-respect. And simultaneously, you'll be soft in your openness to experience, flexible in your adaptation to changing circumstances, gentle in your treatment of yourself and others. This integration of strength and softness, of boundaries and openness, of self-respect and compassion for others, creates a way of being that is both powerful and peaceful. You no longer need to choose between standing up for yourself and maintaining harmony, between honoring your truth and respecting others' perspectives, between protecting your peace and engaging fully with life. So I ask you, what would your life look like if these practices became not just techniques you occasionally remember to apply, but the very foundation of how you move through the world? How would your relationships transform if emotional mastery became your default state rather than an occasional achievement? What might you create, express, or experience if you were no longer limited by reactivity, defensiveness, or the need for external validation? The integration of these practices isn't the end of your journey, it's the beginning of a new way of being. A way of being characterized by freedom rather than constraint, by choice rather than compulsion, by response rather than reaction. A way of being where you're no longer bothered by what once disturbed your peace, no longer controlled by what once triggered your anger, no longer limited by what once defined your emotional experience. This is the art of never getting angry or bothered in its fullest expression, not a rigid discipline or a perfect achievement, but a living, breathing practice that continues to evolve as you do. A practice that transforms not just how you respond to life's challenges, but how you experience being alive. Chapter 11. The Unbothered Life. We've come to the end of our journey together, but in many ways, this is just the beginning. The principles and practices we've explored aren't meant to be studied and forgotten. They're meant to be lived, to be embodied, to become the foundation of a fundamentally different way of moving through the world, what I call the unbothered life. To be unbothered doesn't mean to be indifferent or disengaged. It doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending not to care. It means developing such a profound relationship with your own inner state that external circumstances lose their power to control how you feel. It means living from a place of choice rather than reaction, of response rather than impulse, of wisdom rather than conditioning. Imagine waking up each morning with a sense of spaciousness and possibility, knowing that whatever the day brings, you have the tools to navigate it with grace. Imagine moving through challenging interactions with a calm center that doesn't waver, even when others are reactive or provocative. Imagine facing disappointments, setbacks, and losses with a perspective that allows you to learn and grow rather than contract and suffer. This is the unbothered life. Not a life without challenges, but a life where challenges no longer have the power to derail your peace or dictate your experience. The journey to this way of being begins with a fundamental shift in how you understand your emotions. Most people believe their feelings are caused directly by external events, that another person's actions make them angry, that circumstances make them frustrated, that losses make them sad. This understanding places the source of their emotional experience outside themselves, leaving them at the mercy of a world they cannot control. But as we've explored throughout this journey, your emotions aren't created by external events. They're created by your interpretation of those events, by the meaning you assign to what happens, by the stories you tell yourself about your experience. And this is tremendously liberating, because while you cannot control what happens in the external world, you absolutely can develop mastery over your interpretations, meanings, and stories. This shift in understanding, from seeing your emotions as externally caused to recognizing them as internally generated, is the foundation of the unbothered life. It places the locus of control within you rather than outside you. It transforms you from a reactor to a creator, from someone who is acted upon to someone who chooses their experience. Of course, this doesn't happen through intellectual understanding alone. It requires practice, consistent, intentional practice of the principles we've explored. Each principle addresses a different aspect of emotional mastery, offering a specific tool for transforming your relationship with potential triggers. When you find yourself automatically reacting, the practice of pausing reminds you that there's space between stimulus and response, that you can choose rather than simply react. When you feel disappointed by others, the practice of releasing expectations reminds you that people act according to their nature, not your preferences. When you're caught in an argument, the practice of surrendering the need to be right reminds you that peace is more valuable than winning. When criticism stings, the practice of detaching from others' opinions reminds you that your worth isn't determined by anyone else's assessment. When demands feel overwhelming, the practice of setting boundaries reminds you that your energy is precious and must be protected. When provocation arises, the practice of responding with silence reminds you that not every stimulus requires a response. When frustration mounts, the practice of gratitude reminds you to shift your focus from what's wrong to what's right. When feedback feels threatening, the practice of reframing criticism reminds you to look for the growth opportunity rather than perceiving an attack. When resentment lingers, the practice of letting go reminds you that holding on to anger hurts you more than anyone else. Each of these practices, applied consistently in daily life, gradually reshapes your neural pathways, your habitual responses, your very experience of being alive. What once triggered immediate reactivity now passes through your awareness without disturbing your peace. What once seemed like an attack now registers as simply information to consider. What once felt like a personal affront now appears as merely another person acting from their own conditioning. This transformation doesn't erase your humanity or turn you into an emotionless robot. You'll still experience the full spectrum of human feelings, joy and sorrow, excitement and disappointment, connection and loneliness. But you'll experience these emotions from a place of spacious awareness rather than contracted identification. You'll be able to feel without being consumed, to experience without being controlled, to navigate the ever-changing emotional landscape without losing your center. The unbothered life is characterized by a profound inner freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of automatic reactions, from the prison of others' expectations, from the limitation of your own unexamined patterns. This freedom doesn't isolate you from life. It allows you to engage more fully, more authentically, more powerfully. When you're no longer afraid of being triggered, you can enter. Challenging conversations with openness rather than defensiveness. When you're no longer dependent on others' approval, you can express yourself authentically rather than performing for acceptance. When you're no longer controlled by the need to be right, you can collaborate rather than compete, learn rather than defend, grow rather than stagnate. This way of being transforms not just your internal experience, but your external reality as well. Relationships that were once characterized by tension and conflict become opportunities for genuine connection and understanding. Work that was once a source of stress and frustration becomes an arena for creativity and contribution. Challenges that once seemed overwhelming become opportunities for growth and self-discovery. The unbothered life isn't about escaping from reality. It's about engaging with reality from a fundamentally different consciousness. It's about bringing such presence, such awareness, such intentionality to each moment that you're no longer driven by unconscious patterns or controlled by external triggers. This doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes or get caught in old patterns. The journey isn't about perfection, it's about direction. It's about consistently returning to these practices, especially when you've forgotten them. It's about using each lapse into reactivity as an opportunity to deepen your commitment to conscious response. It's about treating yourself with the same compassion and understanding you're learning to extend to others. As you continue to practice and embody these principles, you'll find yourself naturally becoming a model for others, not because you're trying to teach or convert them, but simply because your way of being demonstrates what's possible. Your calm presence in the face of chaos, your thoughtful response in the midst of reactivity, your maintained peace when others are disturbed, these speak more powerfully than any words could. You'll notice that some people are drawn to this quality in you. They may not be able to name what's different, but they sense the steadiness, the groundedness, the unshakable center from which you operate. They may ask how you remain so calm, how you avoid getting triggered, how you maintain your peace in challenging circumstances. When they do, share what you've learned, not as dogma to be followed, but as possibilities to be explored. Offer these practices as invitations rather than prescriptions. Recognize that each person's journey toward emotional mastery is unique, shaped by their own experiences, challenges, and readiness. And remember that your own journey continues as well. These practices aren't a destination you reach once and for all. They're a path you walk with, increasing awareness and skill. There will always be new challenges, new triggers, new opportunities to choose conscious response over automatic reaction. There will always be deeper levels of understanding to explore, more subtle patterns to recognize, greater freedom to embody. The unbothered life isn't static. It's a dynamic, evolving expression of your growing mastery. It's a continuous unfolding of your capacity to remain centered in the midst of change, to stay present in the face of provocation, to maintain your peace regardless of external circumstances. So, as we conclude this journey together, I invite you to commit not just to remembering these principles, but to living them, to practicing them not occasionally when you remember, but consistently as a way of life, to approaching each interaction, each challenge, each moment as an opportunity to embody the unbothered consciousness we've been cultivating. The world doesn't need more people who are controlled by their reactions, driven by their triggers, defined by their conditioning. The world needs people who have developed the capacity to respond rather than react, to choose rather than compel, to create rather than criticize. The world needs people who embody the possibility of remaining unbothered, even in the midst of chaos, not out of indifference, but out of such profound presence that they can engage without being controlled. You have everything you need to be such a person. You have the understanding, you have the practices, you have the capacity to choose in each moment how you'll respond to what life brings. The only question is, will you use these tools consistently enough to transform not just moments of your experience, but the very foundation of how you move through the world? The unbothered life awaits you, not as a distant ideal, but as a present possibility available in this and every moment. It begins with a single conscious breath, a single moment of presence, a single choice to respond rather than react. And it unfolds breath by breath, moment by moment, choice by choice, as you continue to practice and embody these principles. May your journey be filled with the growing freedom that comes from mastering your emotional responses. May you discover the profound peace that arises when you're no longer at the mercy of external triggers. May you experience the joy of living from choice rather than compulsion, from wisdom rather than conditioning, from presence rather than pattern. And may you share the fruits of this mastery, not through preaching or persuading, but through the silent testimony of a life lived from unshakable peace, a life that demonstrates what's possible when you master the art of never getting angry or bothered,